Welcome back to Divine But Done.
Today, we're diving into a truth that changed everything for the both of us.
When you heal your self-worth, your standards upgrade themselves.
And not by force, not from all those Pinterest affirmations you find at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night, but automatically because you become someone who just doesn't fuck with crumbs anymore.
No breadcrumbs, okay? No
None.
breadcrumbs. No breadcrumbing around here. Um, you probably, if you're listening to this, you probably relate to this to some capacity. I used to pride myself on being the easygoing one. Like it's fine, I don't need too much. Maybe that comes from being an older sister. I think a lot of older sisters may feel that way. As soon as our siblings come into our lives, we're expected to take care and nurture and be there for everyone around us, right? Um, so we'll talk more about where that stems from. For me, I truly think it's because of that. And when you're saying it's fine, I don't need much, it deep down is just shrinking yourself to just stay in people's lives. And that is not fair to you.
And you know what? I just want to quickly mention because I feel like we have not mentioned this yet, but this is our first episode of us filming with our new branding, Divine But Done.
You said this last time on the episode with Ricky.
No, but this is our first time filming alone together, like not with a
Mm-hmm.
guest, with
Mm-hmm.
the new branding. So let's just take a moment quickly to just be like, this is our new vibe, okay? We thought that, it's just regardless, like we were going in a direction where we love what we're doing. We love embodiment. We still value all the values that came with embodiment, but we thought that we needed a little bit of a refresh to signal in a new era of energy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that is why it is now called Divine But Done. And I know some people would have questions, so I'm just mentioning that now so everyone
Period.
knows.
You know what? We are not the same people that we are when we started this. We have grown, we have healed, we have lived, we have learned, as everyone else listening to this has in the past 2, 3 years as well. And so, to carry on to what Mano said, we just feel like this brand embodies more of who we are now and everything that we've learned over the past few years. And we still are going off the same values, everything that we started with. We are just expanding. And in order to be completely transparent and honest on here, we felt like we needed to do a little bit of a rebrand. So that's why. That's why we did.
Yes. Yes. And for this episode specifically, Ash and I were talking beforehand, and we were just like, you know what? We should talk about something that, people are going through on a daily basis. And like one thing that's huge, especially for Gen Z and just for people going through life on a daily basis, is their self-worth, right? And I feel like a lot of the times we devalue ourselves and we shrink ourselves to fit into the mold that other people set for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's why mental health takes such a downward spiral sometimes because we're trying to fit into all of society's standards for us.
So
When
funny you mentioned that.
wait, you have something to go with that flow. What were you gonna say?
I sent my mom a post last night about how the Gen Zs of 1997 to 2003 are different than every other Gen Z because we came into society at a time where things were evolving at a rapid speed. So we got to experience everything that millennials per se got to experience. We came into this world with the millennial ideology being front of mind still. And as we grew up, we got to be fully engaged and involved in the evolution of tech, society, all of these things, mental health, all of that. Um, And we are the generate like that 6 year group is the generation that is like technically inclined, but also can live without a phone, can live without all of those things, right? So we, what's the word? We're like an outlier. That like 6 year group is like an outlier because we have like a millennial understanding, a millennial, we came into this world with the expectations that they had. We were raised on that mindset, but we've also grown to evolve and adapt to everything that Gen Z per se embodies. And just psychologically, because we lived through that, we are very different than both millennials and the rest of Gen Zs.
I like that. I like that. And I think I saw a similar post talking about this because it is really true. Like we grew up at the intersection of both these generations, like
Yeah.
divide. And so because of that, we got a little bit of both. Obviously we get grouped into Gen Z, right? Like that's just how it is. But we have the perspectives a little bit from both because we were raised in that environment, right? And so I think that's such a good point to bring up. And I think
Sorry, I had to piggyback off that because I like literally sent that to my mother last night because it is true. We do function differently because of it. We see things that maybe Gen Zs don't see, but then we also see things that the millennials don't see. So we're like in this very like middle ground of we can be stretched very far and understand a
Mhm.
lot and we have to make our own compromises a lot. We were the mental health guinea pigs. We were like all of those things, right?
Well, also like the introduction of technology, like we were at the forefront of the introduction of technology into the world in the mainstream, like
Hmm.
cell phones, right? Digital phone screens, like stuff like this, right? Like this was never existed before, right? And so we've been, as you said, the guinea pigs. And I think that also it kind of ties into, if I was to loop this back into old generations in a way, old generations, every person in the world is raised in some way or another, right? They grow up in some way or another, whether that's they have parents or they're in a foster home or they're, whatever, right? Like everyone's raised in a different way. And the way someone is raised is the determining factor, which is how they basically become the adult version of themselves. That's why we talk about child trauma. What I'm trying to say is we all have some type of child trauma, and our child trauma affects our self-worth when we grow up, right? That's what I'm trying to say with that. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. But
Okay, okay, wait. Can we reword that? Reword that a little.
yes,
Reword
yes,
that point just a little bit.
yes. Okay. Um, I think our childhoods are very, very important for developing us into the people we become later on in life,
100%. Yes.
right? And I think the reason that is because obviously we all have different experiences,
Hmm.
but the reason I'm bringing this up right now is because in terms of your self-worth, I feel like the way you're treated as a child or the experiences you go through as a child shape how you perceive your own self-worth as you become an
Hmm.
adult.
Hmm.
And one thing I know about anyone who is listening to this episode right now is you're smart, you value growth, and you might have daddy issues, but that's okay because we're gonna work through it. And the thing is, the thing is,
Mano, are you telling us something? No, I'm kidding.
but it's so true though. And I feel like after this little bit of time that we've gone through the past few months, like I feel like we've gone through so much growth, Ashley, in terms of just life battering us and us just continuing to try to improve ourselves and grow mentally and become the best versions of ourselves. And one thing I've done is listen to a million podcasts, right? And all about these topics about self-worth and growth. Um, and it all stems from your childhood. And like the reason you brought and the fact that you brought up that point about the Gen,
And
Gen Z and the millennials was like, yeah, we grew up. That was our childhood. So we developed in this way, right?
mm-hmm,
And they say that Gen Z is the most oppressed generation
mm-hmm.
because we are the most socially active and we compare ourselves the most and whatever. So
Yeah.
when it comes to self-worth, how does our self-worth manifest into our everyday lives when we are so anxious about everything because of all the stimuli that we have on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say something and I forgot.
Am I rambling?
Um,
Am I rambling too
no, 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 because you make very good points. But I had something and I put it at the back of my head to hold on to, and I can't remember now. Um, oh, I'm so happy you're listening to podcasts like that because you know where I learned that from?
where
Take a wild guess.
Gabor Mate.
No, no. Well, he Gabor Mate, literally an angel living on this planet. Anything from him, he's so, I always say this, he's so intelligent, thorough, thoughtful, with everything that he says and puts out there. But it all goes back to that one book. That's
Oh,
it all.
Oprah Winfrey, Dr. Perry and Oprah Winfrey.
Period. You
How you heal.
remember
I
what happened?
did.
It's what happened to you.
That's what it is. What happened to
But
you?
it that's one of the main things that they talk about is um everything as humans that we experience is a rhythm or a pattern, right? Our heartbeat is a rhythm. When you're a baby and you're being nurtured by your mother, if you carry, like if you get that rhythm and you get those patterns as a young child, then you tend to grow up to have stronger rhythm within yourself and stronger um just abilities to manage your emotions and see things for how they are, right? But when you don't get that rhythm and you don't get those patterns and that nurturing from a very young age, whether it be all the time or like consistently, uh you tend to grow up into a more emotionally unstable, chaotic, uh just more of a rattled view of life and yourself, right? So it all really does come down to that. Does that mean that you have to live your life based on the environment that you were given? No, right? We are all given circumstances and we are all given situations and scenarios. What you say to yourself and what you decide at the end of the day, what you accept is what continues to stay. And that comes back to self-worth, right? It really comes back to everything. What you choose to accept is what you get.
That is true. And you know what? You know what? I used to think I was always like being emotionally mature, right? By like holding space, being understanding, being low maintenance, right? And really when I look back at it, I was abandoning myself so I'd feel chosen by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I feel like, sorry, you gonna say something?
No, go, 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 go. Sorry.
Um, but again, like I feel like it's a death spiral type of thing because it keeps on feeding into each other, and then your mind loves to play tricks on you in a way where negative self-talk is so easy for the brain to do, and that's why negative self-talk is innately so common nowadays. Like I mean, for everyone. I mean, even back in the day, like negative self-talk was always a thing. It's just now people are starting to realize the effect it actually has on things other than just yourself. It affects your performance, it affects your mental health, right? It affects your relationships with other people,
Mm-hmm.
and it affects your relationship with yourself, which is the most important relationship that you have on
Mm-hmm.
this planet. And like one thing that I keep on reminding myself is that a secure person does not think of themselves any lower than your best friend would, right? Like your best friend is going to be the one that's advocating for you. They're going to be getting your back, hyping you up. You should be doing that to yourself. You
I
should be doing that to
actually,
yourself.
so one of my friends is going through a little bit of a breakup right now. It's funny that you say that. And yesterday we were just talking, kind of going back and forth, like reflecting on some things. And I said to her, I was like, well, you have to say to yourself what you would say to me or what you would say to, I said another person's name. Um, because we truly like sometimes we don't realize it, but we abandon ourselves in just getting caught up in the moment or trying to please other people. And it becomes a trap, right? Because we think that being, whether it be in friendships or relationships or whatever, we think that like being desirable mean it is like being low maintenance, not like needing much, not needing um to be taken care of, like being able to do things on our own. And yes, being able to do things on your own is super duper important, but you are a human being with feelings, with needs, and you need to view yourself through the same lens that you view the people that you love, right?
Mm.
Like, we don't, I don't think we as humans intentionally do it, lowering our standards, right? I think what we do is truly just abandon ourselves in moments like that, trying to be chosen, right? Sometimes it's our inner child just being like I want you to love me, right? And that trying to appeal, it's really it's a weird dynamic because that inner child is like screaming for the love from like maybe someone else or like a friend or whatever, when you're going through situations where you're like dealing where you have to acknowledge your self-worth. But in choosing yourself and in loving yourself and setting up those boundaries, what you're doing is saying like, hey, no, like I'm a safe space, like choosing myself is important, taking care of myself not on the terms of someone else is important.
And I think what you just identified is literally the premise of a core wound. Because I feel like everything, and this comes from childhood trauma, right? Like the fear where you're like, I want you to love me more. I want more, closeness. I want more like reassurance, validity, whatever from someone else is a core wound from your childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing, the one thing, the one thing that
The one
the
thing.
one thing that people need to understand is that their core wounds fuel how you perceive yourself and
Mm-hmm.
what actions you take to help yourself, right? And so it all stems, if you think of a root, a tree, the root of any issue is of your self-worth issue is your core wounds. And
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned really well that it's about reaffirming to yourself that you are your safe space, right? I
Yeah.
can provide that feeling. If I want love, I can provide myself love because then you're not just saying you want love, you can give it to yourself. And so it puts you in a
Mm-hmm.
spot of power where you're not relying on anybody else to give you that feeling. Because if you love yourself, other people are going to love you too, right? Because people feel the energy. Energy is tracked, and your core wound is the main root problem. Not even problem, it's the main root, I guess, issue, internal issue that you have with yourself subconsciously that is holding back your ability to feel like you love yourself to the full extent.
Mm-hmm.
And so a
Yeah.
lot of people say, how do you cure a wound? Like how okay, like okay, Mano, like cool, hey Mano and Ashley, like I like yeah, sure, we know I have a core wound. What I do though? And that's a
Yeah.
question like a lot of people always have. They're like, okay, well, like sure, you have this childhood trauma. What do you do? Repetition, subconscious
Everything.
repetition.
Everything.
Because if you think about it, like, and repetition, that also sounds very, very, very vague. Repetition
But
can be meant
it's
to
true. Dude, it's true. Simplicity is an advanced course. I'm so sorry for cutting you off, but it's
go
true.
off.
And for the first little bit, it might be like, okay, well, I'm doing this regularly, don't feel a change yet, whatever. It's like with anything, it's like with the gym, it's like with building a relationship. Consistency and repetition is what gets you further, right? Even if there's moments, slower moments, even if there's moments of like self-doubt or like, okay, is this working? At the end of the day, as long as you are consistent, you can, maybe you have to circle back and make changes to what you're doing. Yes, not everything works for everyone, but repetition will always get you there. Everything is a pattern. It's either you choose It's like what's his name? David Goggins says, like, choose your hard, right?
Yes.
Okay, yes, going to the gym and being consistent is hard, but so is like eating junk food and then in 10 years having to go to countless doctor's appointments
Hmm.
because you're having health problems with this, and this, right? It it really, like, it's the same thing with self-worth, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry,
And
so sorry to cut you off, but
no, I think that's a great analogy because again, you make the decisions for your life. And the thing about choosing yourself and all these topics about like core wounds and whatever and like healing them is your brain, it all boils down to science. Like if you think about it like this way, because again, for me, like Ash and I have this joke where I have like not emotional, where I'm like, no, I'm good, but I'm like logical, I'm whatever. And so even in these moments where I have felt for myself that like my self-worth was lower, I'm like, oh, I don't know, like I'm feeling negative thoughts come in, whatever. And I didn't know what to do about it
mhm,
prior, right? I just let them come in. And sometimes it's good to let the thoughts come in, realize that they're coming in and change them after that. But think about it scientifically, okay? I didn't fully grasp this concept until I looked at it from a scientific perspective. And essentially, your brain, the way it's wired, your brain is a very, very complex supercomputer, okay? It is the most powerful machine in the entire world.
okay, Pete Fry.
When, what?
I said, okay, Pete Fry.
Period. But when you look at your brain and any situation when it comes to your self-worth, your brain is wired in a very specific way.
Mhm.
It's wired based on the patterns that you do on a daily basis, your habits, right? What you believe, your values. Your brain is wired to that. The best thing about your brain is it's malleable and you can change it. And
Mhm.
the thing is, it takes time. But with repetition, and what I mean by repetition is literally, if you like, say, for example, you're trying to get over a breakup. How do you get over a breakup? Right? People say time is a healer. Why is time a healer? Because time gives your brain the opportunity to rewire itself so you get your dopamine, your oxytocin, and your serotonin, all the happy hormones from other sources and from yourself.
Exactly. Exact. No, and I love that you put it that way because it's so true when this ties into attachment too. When we go through a breakup, like, immediately, what are the thoughts that go through our heads? It's, well, I'm not going to get to talk to them anymore. I'm not going to get this. And then there's going to be moments where, like, you do something that you did with them and now you're doing it alone and you're thinking about that. It's literally the reason why it can be so difficult to move yourself out of it is because of those patterns and that attachment that grew. And when you are able to understand that, whether it be from a scientific view or like an emotional view, when you understand that time heals, you understand that it heals because what do you do in that time? You spend time with your friends, you spend time alone, you read books, you go to the gym, you go to work, you do things that add value to your life instead of sitting around and thinking about said breakup. If
Mhm.
there's, obviously, we're human, there's moments where you're going to think about it, like, our when we go through breakups or relationships or moments of limerence or like situationships, like any
Yeah.
of that stuff, we get used to talk. We learn about a new person. We get used to talking to them. We learn their quirks. We get annoyed at things that they do. All of that stuff gets wired into our brain. It's like you said, it's a supercomputer. We got files up in here. We keep tabs. We keep all of that stuff. And, like, unfortunately, we don't have a trash in our
Mhm.
computer. Like, it's one of those things where in order to get away from that, you got to keep adding in new files and new files and new things and new experiences.
But you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually don't look at it like that. I don't look at it. No, I look at it like that, except the part where you said we don't have a trash can. I think we have an inbox, and you can file different things within your inbox in different folders.
Uh-huh.
And
Hmm.
I would say specifically because this is something I've been doing, right? And it's this science backed. When you journal your thoughts and your feelings, you get it out of your brain and you
Yes.
you file it somewhere. It's
Yes.
filed. Like it's like you are able to take back your brain space because you've put it
Yes.
somewhere else. And that's why journaling, shadow work is so widely used as a therapeutic method for healing,
Mm-hmm.
because it gets it out of your brain down somewhere where you don't have to think about it. Like if you're trying to heal, journal. If you're trying to rewire your brain, journal on daily, like in the morning. One new routine I've been adopting recently is morning journaling, right? So
Yeah.
I call it my secure morning routine. My
Yeah.
secure morning routine and my secure night routine. Both
Period.
involve journaling, right? And it's just you sit down, you have the same prompts every day, right? You build out your prompts based on what you're trying to accomplish. Say you're trying to make more money. Journal about that. What's my dream life? Every day, how did I show up as my dream, as my highest self today? How did I show
Mhm.
up as my secure self today? Right?
Mhm.
Every day, write it down, reaffirm to yourself what's a negative thought that came into my mind today that is not true. Write it down and reaffirm it on paper every day. And if you do that, your brain rewires itself. And it's even as little as 2 weeks, like literally 2 weeks of doing it consistently, your brain fully, and you start catching them immediately come in your brain, and you're like, that is not correct. Reaffirm that, change that thought. And it's crazy because in 2 weeks, you can become a whole different person just by being intentional about where you put your energy and how you funnel your thoughts.
I love the passion spewing out of you. I can feel it through the computer.
Yeah, I'm trying to share because I'm like, it honestly, the past month has been a hard month, and not just for work. It's been in terms of work, relationships, everything. I'm so grateful for everything that I've been able to do, but I wish I knew what I knew now. And
But
like,
Mano, this is why we don't have a trash can. This is why we don't have a trash can. Because if we had a trash can and we were able to just delete things, we'd forget them. We wouldn't take the lessons from them. That's why we have a file system. And that's why
yeah,
we got to add more files. So I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. And like everything, I truly believe that everything that you go through, if you didn't go through it now, you were going to go through it in 6 months. If you didn't
mm,
go through, like, we are all given situations and experiences and lessons that we need to overcome, whether they be handed down through generations from past
yeah,
lives, from just the way, whatever you believe in, truly, if like we all have our strengths and we all have the things that we need to learn. And for some of us, we're born with this amazing self-worth. For some of us, we come with it teeter-tottering. With some of us, we just don't necessarily have it. And that's why we have these experiences, is for us to learn. And this goes back to like karmic patterns and everything. We continue to go through them until we actually take the lesson, right? So that's why we don't have a trash can. And that's why it is important to file things. And that's why you are exactly on time learning things at the pace that you're supposed to. And if it didn't happen last month, it would have happened in 6 months. If it didn't happen with this person, it would have happened with that person. It was just an experience that you were meant to have, and uh, you've grown from it, and that's the best thing that you could have taken from it.
I love that. And this is why comparisons is the thief of joy, because everyone heals differently, everyone has their own path. And regardless of what you're going through, as long as you make an effort
Mm-hmm.
to go down that healing journey, you are making that effort. Um, I'm in the middle of recording, Carmen. Sorry, guys. My mom just burst in my room, and it was staring at me, and I was like looking at her, waiting for her to say something, and she was sitting there. Sorry. Divine timing, everybody. Um,
um, okay. Since we're talking about this, what is one thing you accepted in your unhealed self that now makes you go, ugh, or like cringe a little bit?
Ooh, exposing me here. I realized that I wanted validation. I realized that validation was something that fueled me. I wanted external validation a lot of the time, even in my relationships, in my like just generally in life, I wanted validation, reassurance. And that is one thing where I'm like, it's fine to have, but my issue was I was looking for it externally. And because I was looking for it externally, it put me into people pleasing tendencies where
Mm-hmm.
I would only act upon what I thought would make someone happy instead of what would make me happy because I was looking for them to fill the void that was in me for
Mm-hmm.
validation, which was a self-fulfilling prophecy of basically downward spiraling because you're never satisfied because you're like, wait, oh, but what if they're not happy? What if they're not happy? Okay, but what if
Can you
I'm
give
not happy?
Can you give, is there an example of like a situation that you could give? Like, is
Yes.
there a moment that's stuck with you that like, because this is good for us. This is good for
Uh-huh.
you to like talk about it because like it's all part of the journey. But like
Yes.
what is one thing that past Mano did that now Mano goes,
Hmm.
honey, we don't do that anymore.
I would, you know what? And it's a good question. I will say, I'll fully candidly, in my past relationships, I realized that a pattern that would always emerge within all of them, like not just one, but like repeatedly, all of them, um, is that I would constantly be looking for validation, or I wouldn't be satisfied in the relationship itself unless they were giving me validation, being like, "I love you," like if that them telling me they love me, telling me like constantly telling me, not believing them. It was that I didn't trust my partners in those situations, and I kept on egging them to give me more of that external feedback so I would be happy. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized after I was like I didn't realize I was doing it in the moment. I didn't realize that it was something I wanted. And then after reflecting, post reflecting, I was like, oh my God, this is actually something that is a unhealthy pattern that I have is I'm looking so much to them to fulfill my need for safety and validation that I was taking away from giving it to myself because I didn't think I could give it to myself. I got to a point where I was only relying on them, which is draining for them too because then they're like why like it just it's this cycle, right? And so I feel like that was one big realization I had where I was like I need to stop looking for external validation as much as I
Mm-hmm.
do because I
Yeah,
can give it to myself.
period. And
What
like
about you?
that doesn't mean that like your partner shouldn't validate you or whatever.
Mhm.
Like that's part of a relationship is uh loving each other, and like knowing what each other needs in order to, but you should not be um replacing what you should be giving yourself with stuff from others.
One thing I will say, in a relationship, do not settle for anything less, okay? They regardless of I'm saying this for my own personal thing, being like, oh, I need to stop looking for external validation. These people, the right person will be your biggest fan. They will support you in everything you do. They will love you endlessly without any concern for anything. The right person will do and will move mountains for you. Okay. So do not let crumbs get into your life. Do not settle for crumbs because the right person will move an entire mountain for you if they love you enough. And that is the indicator that someone actually truly loves you. Okay. So I just want to mention that because I didn't mention that before, but always never lower your standards.
Do not accept something that you would not let your best friend accept.
Yes. Yes.
That I think that's a really good way to, or even like your mother, or like, you know what I mean? Like someone who you truly hold to a high standard and value and love. Do not accept what you would tell them not to accept.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think we should call it the best friend test because if your best friend would say no, then you should sure as hell say no.
And that I think like that's something that I was actually thinking about this yesterday. That's something that I've learned through like going through toxic relationships and all of that is like if your best friend says something, listen to them. Listen
Yeah.
to them because they are not blinded by love and feelings. And yes, you may feel something for someone, but at the end of the day, if they do not treat you right and they do not like love you in all the ways that you could and should and deserve to be loved, they are not your person. So,
Exactly. If he wanted to, he would.
exactly.
If he
Eggs
wanted
and
to,
bacon.
he would.
So, to kind of close out, we kind of shifted to a lot of talking about like feelings that should be acknowledged versus pushed aside, not abandoning yourself. You really like coming out of this, you got to embody it. You don't have to beg anyone. You don't have
Mm.
to fix yourself to fit into someone else's mold or put yourself in someone else's box. Your healed self is allowed to have needs and allowed to have standards, whether it be alone time, whether it be hanging out with your friends, whether it be like needing quality time with your person, any of the above. Your healed self will, as you evolve, your standards will raise as you evolve, to put that into simple words. And there are so many stories we could talk about relating to this. I keep losing my voice today. But I really we we want you to reflect on this, right?
Yes. And you know what? When your self-worth gets real, your energy becomes extremely expensive. People can feel your
Very.
energy. People and the thing is, people don't think this, but like when you are in your highest self, people feel it. You become a magnet for positive
I
energy and positive people around you.
I
Uh,
said this, I'm gonna cut you off really quickly, but one of my friends who I'd say has lived at like a lower energy most of her life, she's been doing a lot of like self-work healing and stuff like that. And there was one day where she texted me and she was like, dude, I got like 3 compliments today and like that never happens. And I said like I said to her, when you're healing yourself and when you're like healing your energy, it like people pick up on it, right? Like when I'm
yeah.
in like my highest self energy, my best, like I feel good internally. I'm not worried about what anyone thinks. People pick up on it. People look at you, people talk to you more, people start
Yeah.
conversations with you, like that's how energy works. That's how we all function, right? Like you are more inclined to talk to someone who is high energy or like is just
Mm.
radiating more of like a secure aura.
And that's not ego, that's emotional maturity.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just mention that, okay? And
Mm-hmm.
you know what, Ashley, let's write this in the books. We should do an episode on ego because I feel like that's a whole other topic that can fit into this, and I feel like people would love to see it.
And what should we do? Bring all of our exes on as panelists? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay, let's close this out with a journal prompt for everyone to reflect on this episode.
Okay. And I want you to listen to this closely. We're gonna do this at the end of each week, at the end of each episode. What's one boundary you've been afraid to hold because you thought it would cost you connection? And what would the most self-worthy version of you do instead?
Curious.
Repeat that one more time. What's one boundary you've been afraid to hold because you thought it would cost you connection? And what would the most self-worthy version of yourself do instead? I recommend getting the book Clarity and Connection by Young Pueblo. This book helped me in a moment where I was struggling with like certain friendships and connecting with certain friends and knowing whether the boundaries I was setting in those moments were right. And it was the best book I could have ever ordered in that moment. And it truly does talk about like clarity and connection and everything that we talked about today. So if this hit, share it with someone that you love, order them that book, or you know what I mean, like share this with someone who maybe needs the reminder, who you love, who you care about, who sometimes struggles maybe with their self-worth.
Yeah, and also don't forget to tag us, DM us, spiral with us at Divine But Done, across Instagram and every other social platform you can find us. We
Drama
see
King.
you, we love you, and your glow up is spiritual, not just aesthetic.
See you
See you
next
next week.
week.
Stay divine,
But
but
done.
done.